So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first session of our webinar series this autumn. There are still some people joining, but I think we should start. As you notice, your camera and your microphones are muted today, but the chat is open. So please feel free to use the chat for asking questions during the webinar. We will have a question and answers session at the end. So I will be the moderator today. My name is Karin Henriksson. I'm the Global Sales Director here at Lead Taylor and Spectral Blue. The presentations will be recorded and made available for later viewing. So let's first have a look at today's agenda. So Dr. Michel Schmidt, our CEO, will start with some opening words. He will be followed by our lead scientist, Camilla Höglund, who will talk us through this fantastic technology. After her, we will hear from Dr. Kirsi Saukkonen, our senior scientist, how automated and continuous disinfection reduces the risks of contamination. After that, our product manager, Tuukka Autio, will tell you how we are helping our customers to plan and optimize the use of our solution with computer-aided disinfection planning. And in the end, as I mentioned, we will have time for questions and answers and also some discussions. So please, I give the word to Michel Schmidt, our CEO.
Thank you, Karin. I'm working on getting my camera on. There seems to be a little bit of a problem there, but now it works. So, good morning, everybody, from my side, and I'm happy to see that we are now a decent crowd. So, thank you all for coming. Today, we're going to talk about our patented multi-wavelength, high-intensity blue technology, and we're going to keep into the basic science today. During this autumn, of course, we're going to go more into details on applications. Please remember, this is one of the biggest innovations ever in the field of disinfection. And last year, we were able to introduce our plug-and-play devices, and since that, the market has really exploded. Customers in one end in pharma, in their clean rooms, and we have, for example, the food industry where it's pretty much everywhere. And then on the very other end, we even have it in specialty kitchen areas in NATO, critical NATO air bases. And these are places where you really don't want contaminations or infections. And that you will see more in detail during the autumn. But today, I want you to sit back, enjoy, be active in the discussion at the end, and of course use the chat box. And with no further delay, I'd like to introduce then our next speaker, who is our lead scientist, Camilla Höglund. Please, Camilla, stage is yours.
Thank you, Michel, and on my behalf also welcome and nice to have you all here listening into our technology and our presentations. The technology we are here to discuss today is a technology that I was involved in developing from the beginning. And my background and expertise has been on optogenetics, but also using both blue light and UV light for disinfection purposes. And I feel that I know the both technologies very well, and I also know where the good and bad sides lie. It's from my side, it's very interesting to follow what is there are many things that are happening in the world right now that tells me that there is a need for this type of disinfection technology that we can offer. As I think many of you already know, there is increasing antibiotic resistance seen in a lot of different microbes. And this is very evident in the healthcare. We know that hospital-acquired infections are on the rise, but especially the ones where we have resistant microbes or even multi-resistant microbes being the reason for the infection. These are on the rise in Europe now, and that is telling me that there is a need to do something different than what we are doing today. The same problem can be seen in food industry with resistant microbes being on the rise. In addition, we also see that chemicals and their use is being heavily restricted. So there are more and more chemicals being banned. There is more restrictions on their use, and this also causes problem when you want to do disinfection and kill microbes. As a third, in 2021, EU decided to ban the use of all mercury-containing light sources. So the traditional gas discharging lamps that we have been using both for white lighting but also UV light are now banned in the EU. But because UV lights are used in very critical disinfectional purposes, EU decided to give them an exemption period of 3 years. So until 2025, you're still allowed to some degree to use UV lights in different disinfection applications. But I don't know if anyone knows what's going to happen after that. But we already see that with our customers being on the alert, realizing that they need to try to find alternative disinfection sources. And we also have a lot of customers that have already decided to move away from UV light and start using our technology. Which brings me to my next slide and the benefits and why some of our customers choose to use blue light for disinfection purposes. As I mentioned, UV light, but also chemicals, as we all know, they are not safe for humans. They can cause a lot of problems. They also cause a lot of problems for materials, for surfaces. And this is a very strong reason why many of our customers want to find an alternative solution. If there is something else available that they can do the same thing, that's what they want to move away from. And we have customers that have successfully tested in the clean rooms, for example. They were able to reduce the use of chemicals for disinfection. And that not only saves money, of course, which is an obvious motivator, but it's on the same time, it's a less of a burden on the environment. It's a less of a risk for staff and workers. And I think that's one of the beauty with this whole technology, because it can offer you a lot of benefits, but not really any downsides that I have seen. One of the other benefits that we're gonna talk about a little bit more later on is, of course, the ability to be certain that you have the same disinfection result at all times. It's not dependent on human labor and human errors. but you can guarantee that you will have the same disinfection results every time, every day, all the time. It's also maintenance free. Because we use LED light technology, it has a long lifetime, and it's in that sense also a very sustainable solution. And these things are also very important to our customers today. So what is blue light really? And one of the questions we usually get or often get is, so is this some kind of UV light, or how is it different? And I will start by showing you this spectrum of light, because some of you might not be that familiar with what is light and what is UV light and what wavelengths and how do they fit together. But those of you that have used UV light know that the most commonly used UV light for disinfection purposes is UVC, and in more particular, those traditional mercury-containing tubes that I talked about before, they have a emission maximum of 254 nanometers, and this is the most commonly used UVC disinfection solution today. This is very different when we move up in the spectrum and reach the visible light spectra, and in particular 400 to 500 nanometers. This is where we found the visible blue light spectra, and our technology is using only visible blue light sources, so it doesn't contain any UV light whatsoever. What some of you also might know, and I think the confusion comes a little bit from the fact that if you have been using the traditional UVC tubes, you would know that they look blue to the human eye. They will look blue. And this is the reason, because they are so-called broad spectrum light sources. They are not the LED light sources, but the broad spectrum light sources. And they contain small amounts of blue wavelengths as well. And that's why they look blue to you. But UV light in itself is not visible to the human eye. So how does blue light really kill microbes? First, I want to say that it kills microbes very differently to UV light. The round circle here in the slide represents any microbial cell. So it can be a bacteria, a mold, or a yeast. And what they all have in common is that they contain blue light absorbing compounds. We know that these blue light absorbing compounds are very specific to microbes, so human cells don't really contain them. And they are part of the microbe's natural metabolism, so they are present in all microbes. And when they are exposed to high enough blue intensity and the right wavelength, and this is important, these two, high enough intensity and the right blue wavelength, then they will be activated and start producing a lot of what you can see in the image as ROS in orange, reactive oxygen species. And these reactive oxygen species have the ability to break down almost any structure that is nearby. So they can break down the cell membrane, they can break down DNA, RNA, they can break down different lipid structure, protein structures, enzymes, basically anything. And our patent technology and what we discovered when we started doing research was that in addition to the first blue wavelength that was found to be antimicrobial. This is 405 nanometers. There are some other blue wavelengths that also have a similar effect. And what we especially discovered, and what is the base of our patent, is that when you use more than one blue wavelength on the same time, you get a multiplied antimicrobial effect. It's not an additive effect, so it's not like 1 + 1 and does something. It's many times more energy efficient and more cost efficient disinfection solution. And the area has been extensively studied. To this day, we know that there's a lot of more than 2,000 scientific publications. There are many microbes that have been studied, enough to know that they all do get inactivated by blue light. But there are some differences between different species. And this is just a table to give you a small overview, kind of an idea that there has been hundreds and hundreds of microbes studied, all showing the same thing. That when you use this technology the right way, it does work and it does kill microbes. In addition, I want to highlight some studies that have been done with our technology, and this first by Harvard Medical School. This is actually after our patent was filed. I was at the scientific conference and talking to some researchers there and asked them, have they ever tried using 2 blue wavelengths on the same time? And their answer was, well, no, why would we? Because that was perhaps the thought that there is no real reason to do so. You can use one or the other. But 2 years after that, they published a paper where they had tested 3 different clinical mRNA strains, and their conclusion was exactly the conclusion that we had, that you can use one blue wavelength or you can use the other, but when you use them together, they are many times more efficient. We also have tested our technology against EN standard that is mentioned here, also validating that yes, it does work, and it works on these strains that are mentioned in the standard. When I think the third one, and that is something I want to highlight, and this has been interesting to me also to follow this technology, because when we started out doing the research and bringing this technology to the market, our message then was that it doesn't really work on viruses. And when COVID hit, there was a few papers coming out showing that actually blue light seems to be efficient on coronavirus and influenza virus. And this was, of course, something new to us as well. And we made a collaboration with a leading virus laboratory here in Helsinki at the University of Helsinki that had all the different variants of SARS-CoV-2, and we tested on the Delta variant, and we were able to verify that yes, this blue light technology actually works on viruses as well. So this has been a very new, interesting development for us. one thing that we want to try to do, and the message that we try to bring to our customers is that we want you to start to think about disinfection in a different way, because at least what I feel from my perspective is that a lot of focus in disinfection has been on temporary disinfection. You want a disinfection agent that is going to give you a quick 4-log reduction in half a minute, and then you're happy. And of course, that is very good. That's also what you need. But I feel that there is less attention being paid to that. There's 24 hours in a day, and you want to be able to keep microbial levels down at all times during the day, not just a temporary solution. That is not enough, because we all know what happens soon after you've done the disinfection. But more about that, my colleague Kirsi Saukkonen, who is our lead scientist, will tell you about.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you, Camilla. My career is mainly on the infectious diseases. I'm a clinical microbiologist and an infection preventionist, that I like to call. And I have also done a lot of studying of the efficacy of different disinfectants that are used mainly on the healthcare field. But let's go to my presentation. So my topic today is advantages of using automated and continuous disinfection. And as many of you know, so microbes, which are bacteria, viruses, and molds, so they inhabit all living and inanimated surfaces. Inanimated surfaces meaning tabletops, floors, walls, ceilings, and stuff like that. Most microbes are harmless and even beneficial to humans and animals, but however, 2 to 10% cause diseases or even food spoilage. And this is the main reason why disinfection is required to destroy these harmful microbes in different areas. Various chemicals or so-called non-touch automated methods can be used to disinfect different microbes. The most widely used chemical disinfectants are alcohol, chlorine, and various surface active agents in the form of liquid or steam. And the automated methods include various antimicrobial light technologies and also these chemicals that could be fogged in the disinfected area. But while all the previously mentioned methods are efficient in killing microbes, there are also harmful side effects. Manual wiping with disinfectant and with either a disposable or multi-purpose cloth is very time consuming, and the performance is affected by a human factor. It has been reported that long-term exposure causes occupational health issues and like increasing numbers of COPD, which is the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and asthma. And these are reported in many scientific articles. Disinfectants leave chemical residue on surfaces which can form a so-called dry biofilm, and this dry biofilm offers microbes good living conditions. And of course, environmental issues are very important today. If we talk about ultraviolet light, and especially the antimicrobial UVC radiation, it is very efficient in killing microbes, so it kills almost every living microbe. But the thing is that it doesn't distinguish a microbial cell from a human cell, and and that's one of the biggest weaknesses of ultraviolet light. You can never enter the room with an ultraviolet light on, and as Camilla mentioned, so there are certain EU regulations nowadays that ban oxygen generating and mercury containing UVC lights. And as for the hydrogen peroxide fogging, it is also very efficient. It reaches all the corners and it doesn't care about the shadows in the disinfectant area, but it's also toxic to people, especially in very high concentrations. And the other thing is that it's time consuming, and especially in the healthcare area, even the ventilation time that varies from 30 minutes to 2 hours, that could be too long. And when we are disinfecting items, surfaces and spaces in different premises, that is very often very cumbersome and require more than one method. For example, in food industry, there are certain chemicals that can't be used. Hydrogen peroxide fogging is detrimental to raw meat, so it changes the color and the color of the product, and of course the raw materials bring very many problems because they come from different sources, and there often could be high organic loads with those raw materials. The good thing about food industry is that the quality control is regulated by law, at least in most of the countries. If we think of healthcare, so the challenges are, I would say, even bigger than in food industry. Healthcare organization is often very open environment compared to the food industry organizations. You could go quite freely, in very many spaces. Patients move around, employees move around, visitors move around. You use very many equipment, and the worst thing I would say is that there is no statutory quality control in healthcare areas nowadays. There are requirements that suggest that healthcare environment should be quality controlled, but this is only in the near future to be done. And some general issues are, for example, the dirty ventilation tracts, which should be maintained in healthcare at least every third year, which I highly doubt that is done. And then the renovation process of any premises is always a challenge. That's why there is this question that what if you could automate disinfection? What good would that bring to us? There is Dr. Weinstein, who almost 20 years ago stated that given a choice of improving technology or improving human behavior, technology is always the better choice. And I think that everybody understands why. And because the manual work is always laboring and it requires safety procedures, and the old methods are also episodic. You can't use them continuously. And now we finally get to this last slide, which was actually the topic of my presentation. So traditional disinfection means that it's usually manual disinfection done by some kind of a textile disposable of multi-purpose cloth. You put disinfectant on this cloth and you wipe the surfaces. And depending on the disinfectant, it leaves the surfaces a certain amount of chemical, and then the chemical starts the killing process on the surfaces. But it also leaves the surfaces this chemical residue that I mentioned before. And then to get a satisfactory result, you should do this wiping every 3 to 4 hours, because depending on the disinfectant, of course, the bacteria start to grow back on the surfaces quite rapidly. And if you think, for example, a healthcare premise, so you should do this critical touch point disinfection at least in many days or many times per day, and this is of course not the reality. But with an automatic disinfection, you have this phenomena that you use the blue light, you put the light on, the light starts to kill bacteria on the surfaces and air, not that rapidly than with the wiping, but after 2 to 4 hours, you already get very low amounts of bacteria on the surfaces. When the light is put off, so the bacteria start to grow on the surfaces again, but the more you use these on-off sections, so the bacterial level never reaches the actual high count that we started from. And the more and more you use blue light, so the less you get the bacteria on the surfaces. And this we have already shown even in our own experiments to be true. And before I give the floor to our global product manager, Tuukka, I would say that I often get the question that where can I use from the customers, that where can I use blue light? And I often turn it back that it's actually easy to answer the question where I can't use the blue light. So Tuukka, floor is yours.
Thank you, Kirsi. So my name is Tuukka Autio, and I work as the Global Product Manager at LED Taylor, and my tasks include technical support to our customers and our partners, and I help them in choosing which devices to use and in which scenarios. So let's jump into my presentation. Here we go. So my presentation will talk about how to put the things that Camilla and Kirsi just mentioned into practice and into action. The content is as follows. First, I will explain that what is the idea of doing computer-aided disinfection planning. Then I will explain 2 key measurements that we need to determine that the disinfection will take place as intended. Third, I will show you a live demo of the software that we use and some example rooms. And finally, I will give you a list of details that we will need from you to be able to make a plan for your facility. But before we go into the computer-aided planning, I will show these pictures to you to show you what we actually do. So Spectral Blue devices are automatic devices that emit multi-wavelength blue light that kills microbes in the air and on surfaces. And we have different kinds of units. We have plug-and-play units that you can put over a workbench in a laboratory. You can put it inside a biosafety cabinet. And we have devices that you can install in the ceiling in a fixed way. So what is the idea behind using computer planning for the blue light disinfection? So we use a special software that we can utilize to optimize the number of Spectral Blue devices that we will need for different facilities. And the planning process is quite straightforward. We first draw a 3D model of your target room or target area. Then of all of our Spectral Blue devices, we have digital profiles that we can just drag and drop with the mouse into the 3D model. And when we click play, the software will automatically calculate the resulting blue light intensity on different target surfaces. And the targets can vary from desks, workbenches, to equipment and machines, or the whole room that takes into account the floors, walls, doors, door handles, things like that. And the basic idea that why do we do this is that we always want to guarantee that our customers get a working disinfection solution with blue light. So we use the computer software to calculate that we have a high enough intensity in the areas that we want to disinfect. So it will always work. Then a few words about two key measurements that we need for the planning. The first one is blue light intensity. And blue light intensity is a measure of how much light we get on the target surface, for example, a tabletop or a desk. We need a certain blue light intensity to trigger the chemical reactions inside the microbial cells, like Camilla explained in her presentation. And the intensity basically depends on two factors. The first is the device power, so how powerful blue light device you have, and the distance from the device to the target surface. And typically, the farther we go from your light source, the smaller the intensity will get. So that's something that we have to take into account. The second measure is the energy dose. So to use blue light to kill the microbes, the blue light needs to be on for a long enough time during the day. An energy dose is simply a measure of how much blue light energy we have projected on the target surface over time. And it is calculated simply by multiplying intensity in milliwatts with time in seconds. Now, if you increase either part of the equation, if you increase intensity or if you increase time, the energy dose will go up. And vice versa, if you decrease the intensity or if you decrease the time, our energy dosage will go down. And this means that we can use these two factors to play around and try different setups in the facility. So let's imagine that we have a blue light installation that can disinfect a laboratory workbench in just 2 hours, and we have two light sources, two devices above the desk. That's great. 2 hours is a good target. But what if you are happy in doing the same in 4 hours instead of 2? So you can manage with 4 hours disinfection time. That simply means that we can halve the number of devices. So we can save you costs by reducing the number of devices if we can increase the disinfection time. So this is how we can optimize the setup for different purposes. So let's jump now into the software side of things. We are now in the planning software, and I have prepared a few example rooms for us. So the first one is a simple room with a desk and a chair, and we have one device above the desk, and our target here is to disinfect the tabletop. The device has been brought down from the ceiling with wires about 50 centimeters down, and we can tell the software to calculate that how much blue light we get on the surface. So the software will return us a colorful heat map of the intensity and milliwatt figures. And when we know the intensity and we know our internal spectral blue energy dose target, we can calculate the disinfection time in this case. So with these results, we can say that the tabletop is disinfected in 8 hours. So, for example, overnight use will do fine. Then let's look at something more complex. Here we have a cutoff room. This could be a personal cutoff room in a food factory, for instance. So there is a hygiene barrier that splits the room between the dirtier area and the cleaner area. So the employees will come from the left, they will gown themselves and hop over the hygiene barrier to wash their hands and then enter the production. The target in this room is to keep the whole room clean and free of microbes, so we prevent any contamination from entering the production areas. Here we have placed an array of 4 devices in the room, and we can calculate the resulting intensity on different surfaces. For example, the sink, the hygiene barrier, and the floor itself. Now, typically, this kind of rooms can be equipped with a motion sensor, so the blue light will turn on automatically whenever the room is empty. And this will provide the kind of continuous disinfection effect that Kirsi talked about in her presentation. So with the use of automation, we can make sure that the room is disinfected 24/7 and minimum or no microbes can enter the production area with the people flow. Then, as the final thing, I will show you a bigger complex. So here we have, for instance, a clean room, a modular clean room complex in a pharmaceutical factory, where you have multiple personal cutoff rooms, material airlocks, corridors, production areas, and a packaging machine, for example. So these can be GMP created facilities with GMP classes ranging from A, B, C to D. And this is just to show that we can plan and simulate the solution for all kinds of different facilities very easily, which then brings us to my last slide. So what information do we need from you to make a simulation? The minimum set of data for us is the room shape and size. So what kind of room is it, how large it is, and how high it is. The second thing is that we need the potential blue light activity time in hours. So how many hours can the devices be on during the day? And last, maybe, do you prefer plug and play units that you can just plug into a wall outlet, or do you prefer a fixed installation? We are, of course, happy to work with more detailed information as well, if available. So, for example, are you targeting the whole room or a specific area in the room? Are you targeting a specific microbial problem, for instance, mold, listeria, or biofilms? Or are you looking for general disinfection? One important aspect is that will Spectral Blue be your primary disinfection method, or will it be installed to support your daily chemical disinfection? Because that will have an effect on the intensity that we might use in the room. So the key take from this presentation today is that we do computer simulation to guarantee that our customers always get a working disinfection solution. It allows us to select which devices to use, how many of them to use, and in what time we can achieve complete disinfection. With that, I would like to pass the microphone back to our moderator, Karin Henriksson, and for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Tuukka, and thank you, Kirsi, Camilla, and Michelle also for your input today. So actually we did just get a question here now in the chat. The question is, does blue light, and I think this is for you, Tuukka, does blue light disinfection require continuous exposure? Say if I have minor interruptions of 30 seconds to 1 minute, how much will it affect the killing action? And how does the software manage this?
That's a very good question. So we talked about the energy dose. So when the blue lights turn off, the energy dose will stop accumulating. But as soon as you turn the devices back on, we will continue to accumulate. And maybe Camilla can talk further about this, but there is also evidence that actually flicking the blue light on and off periodically can have an increased effect on killing the microbes. So it might also be beneficial to turn it on off during the process every now and then. And for instance, if we use it in a personal cutoff room when somebody comes in for a short time and then leaves the room and the blue lights go off and back on, this can actually accelerate the killing process.
Yeah, you're right, Tuukka, and I can just quickly comment that as long as you have had the blue light on for most of the day, you will be certain that there is minimal or no microbes left on the surface, and a short interruption here and there will not increase the microbial levels or kind of do any risk of contamination. That it could actually be, as Tuukka said, even optimal to have short intervals in between where it's off.
Okay, thank you for the answers. There is no more questions at the moment in the chat, but I had some questions sent directly to me. So one is about areas of that are shaded. So for example, under tables or under chairs. So Camilla, can you answer this question, how it works in these areas?
Yeah, that's good, because that's questions that we get quite often from our customers. So in general, we can rely quite a lot on reflections. And I think that's surprising sometimes to our customers that blue light is reflected quite well from different surfaces. UV light can also be reflected, but not as well. So metallic surfaces, for instance, can reflect up to 90% of the blue light, and white painted walls usually reflect something between 30 and 50%. Our rooms are quite well designed to reflect visible light, so when you use the blue light continuously, you can rely quite a lot on reflections also in these shaded areas.
Thank you. Here's now a question to our product manager. So Tuukka, about integrated sensors in the plug and play devices. Are you planning to integrate or have you tested this?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So we have identified the need for providing automation for the plug and play devices as well. And as a matter of fact, we will introduce something towards that end during the fall. So there will be an automated solution that will provide the on and off functionality for the plug and play devices using a sensor input, for example, a motion sensor.
Thank you. The next one is also for you, Tuukka. So there's a question. I have seen the slide for the dose, which is the typical dose you use for achieving the disinfection of a zone or a different area, specific area.
Yeah, we have an approximated average dosage of blue light that we will need to take care of most microbes. And if there are no special requirements for battling a certain kind of microbe, we will use our general rule or general dosage instructions. But if the customer knows that there is something that's potentially more difficult to kill, then we might increase the daily dosage by adding more blue light or by increasing the time. One good example could be biofilms that typically in the beginning might take more energy. And the other example might be areas where you have spore forming microbes and you might have spores on the surfaces, then we will use a higher dosage. But if there is no generic or there is no specific target, then we will use our internal guideline for general disinfection.
Yeah, and I guess this will always be discussed with the customer and planned according to the customer's needs. So we don't have a one answer that fits everyone.
Exactly.
So then there is a question about water, and maybe this is for you, Camilla. The question is, if the room has standing water, will it affect the killing action? And now I'm not sure, maybe the one who has written the question, but as I understand it, do you maybe mean the killing in the water? So if we also can kill microbes in the water.
Yeah, this is a good question that we get quite a lot, and what we know now is that blue light penetrates water really well. So if it's clear water that is not colored or kind of it can penetrate water really well. To this day, we don't have a lot of applications for water purification. UV light has traditionally been used for a long time for water purification purposes, but UV light will not penetrate water that well, as opposite to blue light that can reach really far away in the water. But there is not a lot of research on what is the needed dosage, what kind of blue light doses do we need to kill microbes if they are in the water, and how well does it actually work? These are still questions that we haven't really answered. But there are some applications now. We actually been talking to different customers that have started using it for these purposes. So I think we will know more in the future about this.
Yes, thank you. So actually there is one more question that I have that was sent to me. So this sounds so good. And why haven't I heard about this before if this is working?
Oh,
Camilla.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, this is actually from personal experience. This is how I felt about this technology a little bit more than 10 years ago. And the short answer is, which is quite surprising, I think, to many, is the research community has known about antimicrobial effects of blue lights for quite some time, but before the development of LED light technology that happened quite recently, there was not really any good light sources available to study this in more detail, which wavelengths work, and you couldn't really use this high intensity narrow wavelength in an application or anything. The light technology was not there in place to actually study this and utilize it. So what needed to happen was we needed to get the light technology development in form of LEDs before we could actually start using the technology this way.
Okay, thank you, Camilla, and thank you, Tuukka, and for the answers. And as for now, I do not see any more questions. So, but everyone here in the room, if you have any questions afterwards, so please feel free to send the questions by email or here in the chat also afterwards, and we will answer them personally to you. So today we have heard about the multi-wavelength high-intensity blue light technology. We have also learned about why automated and continuous disinfection is so important. And we have heard about how we can help our customers to plan and optimize the solution so that you always have a working disinfection solution. So those were the topics of today. We do have a series of webinars for this autumn, and the site or the page for the webinars has been updated. So please, everyone, go and have a look at the coming webinars and register for the webinars so you don't miss out on these interesting topics. So from my side, thank you for today and have a nice day.